The world for the boy was made of sounds and textures. Since he was very small, long before his memories could properly form, the lights had gone out in his eyes. A sudden fierce illness had stolen his sight, leaving him in a permanent darkness. But if you asked him, he wouldn't call it dark. To him, it was a world rich with noise, a symphony that painted pictures more vivid than any color could. His name was Leo, and he was 10 years old. He knew his small town not by its streets on a map, but by its music. The sharp cling-clang of the bell over the grocery store door was different from the softer ding-dong of the post office. He could tell the time of day by the chorus of birds outside his window, the cheerful chirping at dawn, the lazy tweets of the afternoon, and the quiet settling of evening. He recognized people long before they spoke. His mother had a light, quick step, her shoes making a friendly tap-tap on the pavement. His father's walk was heavier, a solid, reliable thump-thump. The mailman had a slight limp, creating a unique step-drag rhythm that announced his arrival from half a street away. For Leo, every person was a unique song. But the other children at his school, the ones who lived in a world of flashing colors and quick glances, didn't understand this. To them, Leo was the boy who needed help finding his classroom. He was the one who ate his lunch slowly, carefully feeling the shape of his sandwich so he wouldn't drop it. They didn't bully him, not in a mean-spirited way. It was more a feeling of not knowing what to do with him. They would talk a little louder around him, as if he were hard of hearing. Or 他们会避免和他一起玩激烈的游戏，因为他们认为他无法参与. He was like a piece of a different puzzle, kinda there, but never quite fitting in. The schoolyard was the hardest place. It was a chaotic explosion of noise where all the individual songs he loved got mixed up into a confusing roar. On this particular afternoon, a warm one with a breeze that carried the smell of cut grass, Leo was standing near the edge of the playground. He was listening to the familiar sounds, the high-pitched shrieks of a game of tag, the steady thump of a basketball, the distant hum of a lawnmower. A group of older boys were huddled nearby, their voices a low, energetic rumble. He recognized the leader of the group, a boy named Rohan. Rohan had a loud, confident voice that always seemed to be trying to fill up all the space around him. His footsteps were quick and heavy, like he was in a hurry to get everywhere. Leo wasn't really paying attention to their conversation until he heard his own name. Leo? Don't be stupid. What would he do? One of the boys snickered. Leo felt his cheeks grow warm. He focused on the feel of the breeze on his skin, pretending he hadn't heard. Rohan's voice cut through. Yeah, seriously. What would he even know about it? He probably can't even find the stage. The boys laughed, a short, sharp sound that didn't have any real joy in it. Leo knew that laugh. It was the sound people made when they were uncomfortable and covering it up with a joke. He tightened his grip on the white cane he used to navigate. He wished he could melt into the brick wall behind him. Later that day, the reason for their conversation became clear. The principal's voice came over the crackling school intercom, announcing the annual spring talent show. It was the biggest event of the school year. The whole town would come to watch. Excitement buzzed through the hallways, a physical energy Leo could feel in the air. The next day, the buzz was even louder. Everyone was talking about what they would do. Someone was going to sing a popular song. A group of girls were practicing a dance routine in the gym. Someone else was going to do magic tricks. Leo was in the auditorium after school, waiting for his mother to pick him up. The auditorium was one of his favorite places. It was vast and echoey. When it was empty, it felt like a giant quiet cave. And in the center of the stage sat the reason he loved it so much, the old upright piano. It was a forgotten thing, covered in a fine layer of dust, its dark wood scratched and dull. Most of the kids ignored it, but to Leo it was a treasure chest. When the hall was empty, he would slowly make his way onto the stage, his cane tapping softly. He would find the piano bench and sit down. He never played a song. Not really. He would simply press a single key and listen. He would lean his head close, his ear almost touching the wood, and let the single note vibrate through him. He would press the keys softly, then hard, listening to the difference in the sound. He would press two keys together, hearing how their sounds fought or danced with each other. On this day, he was doing just that. He was exploring the low notes, which rumbled like a distant thunder, and the high notes, which tinkled like falling water. He was so lost in this world of vibration that he didn't hear the footsteps approaching. "Hey, what are you doing there?" It was Mr. Davies, the stern music teacher. His voice was sharp and his footsteps were always very quiet, which Leo found unsettling. Leo jerked his hands away from the keys as if they were hot. "Nothing, sir. I was just listening." Mr. Davies let out a sigh. "This is a valuable instrument, boy. You can't just be fiddling with it. You'll put it out of tune." He didn't say it meanly, but with a tone of tired impatience, the way an adult speaks to a child who doesn't understand the rules. "Come on, off you go. Your mother will be waiting." Dejected, Leo gathered his things and let Mr. Davies guide him off the stage. As he was led away, he could still feel the memory of the piano's vibrations in his fingertips. It was a feeling of magic, a feeling he desperately wanted to feel again. The teasing about the talent show continued the next day at recess. Rohan and his friends were bragging about their own plans, which seemed to involve a rock band with air guitars. "And what about you, Leo?" Rohan's voice was suddenly close. "You got a talent? You gonna do a trick where you guess what color something is?" The boys around him snorted with laughter. Leo felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wanted to disappear. But then a strange feeling rose up in him. It wasn't anger exactly. It was a small, defiant spark. He thought of the piano, of the beautiful, lonely sounds it held inside. I can play," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Rohan leaned in. "What was that?" "You can what?" "I can play the piano," Leo said, a little louder this time. For a second there was silence. Then Rohan burst out laughing. "You play the piano? You can't even see the keys." The other boys joined in, their laughter loud and Bauwejo Leo. Rohan, puffing out his chest, decided to make a grand show of it. He raised his voice so that other kids on the playground could hear. "You know what, everyone? Leo says he's going to be in the talent show. He's going to play the piano." More kids turned to look. Leo's face was burning. Then Rohan made his move. It was the kind of empty promise older kids make to seem clever. "I'll tell you what," Rohan announced, his voice full of mocking confidence. "If he performs, if he actually gets up on that stage and plays something, I'll get him a piano, a real one, for himself." The declaration was met with hoots and cheers from his friends. It was a ridiculous promise, a joke. They all knew it. A piano was expensive. Rohan would never actually do it. The whole point was that it was an impossible challenge, a way to highlight how silly Leo's claim was. But in that moment, something shifted inside Leo. The laughter and the teasing didn't hurt as much anymore. They were just noise. All he could focus on was the promise. A piano, his own piano. The thought was like a light switching on in his dark world. It was a dream so big, so bright, he could almost touch it. He took a deep breath, facing the general direction of Rohan's loud voice. He ignored the snickering, the whispers. He made his voice as steady as he could. "Okay," Leo said. "It's a deal." The laughter died down, replaced by a surprised silence. They had expected him to shrink away, to cry, to take it back. They hadn't expected this quiet, simple acceptance. Rohan was caught off guard. "Wait, you're serious?" "Yes," Leo said. And without another word, he turned and began tapping his way back towards the school building, leaving a group of very confused boys behind him. The joke had suddenly stopped being funny. For Leo, the real work was just about to begin. The walk home from school that day felt different. Usually, Leo moved carefully, his white cane tapping a steady rhythm on the pavement, his mind focused on the map of sounds and smells that guided him. But today his head was buzzing with a new frightening thought. He had accepted a challenge. He had promised to perform in the talent show. The boldness of it made his stomach feel fluttery like a trapped bird. When he got home, the familiar sounds of his small house wrapped around him. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the gentle tick-tock of the old clock in the hallway. His mother was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. He could hear the quick, precise chop-chop-chop of the knife on the wooden board. It was a sound that usually made him feel safe and calm. He stood in the doorway for a moment, just listening. "Leo, is that you, Beta?" his mother asked. She always knew it was him by the sound of his footsteps. "Yes, Ma," he said, his voice quieter than usual. He made his way to the kitchen table and slid into his usual chair. He could smell onions and spices in the air. He ran his fingers over the familiar grooves in the wooden tabletop. His mother stopped chopping. "Something is on your mind," she said. It wasn't a question. She could always tell. Leo took a deep breath. "The school is having the talent show," he began. "Oh, that's nice," she said, her voice cheerful. "It will be fun to watch." She started chopping again. "I'm not going to watch," Leo said softly. The chopping stopped. The kitchen was suddenly very quiet. "What do you mean? I told some boys. I'm going to be in it. I'm going to play the piano." The silence that followed was heavy and long. He could hear his mother put the knife down. He could feel her moving closer. And then she sat in the chair next to him. He felt her hand cover his. "Leo," she said, her voice gentle but full of worry. "You don't play the piano." "I can learn," he said, his voice gaining a little strength. I can feel it. I know I can." He told her everything. He told her about Rohan and the other boys, about their teasing, and about the promise of a piano. He didn't tell it like a sad story. He told it like a business deal. He said if I perform, he will get me my own piano. A real one. His mother sighed, a long, tired sound. He could feel her sadness and her worry. She was always trying to protect him from a world that could be harsh and unkind. She knew how much words could hurt even when they weren't meant to. "Oh, my boy," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "That is a very big dream. And those boys, they were not being serious. A piano costs more money than a boy like that has. It was a joke." "I know," Leo said, his head dipping down. "I know it was a joke for them, but it's not a joke for me." He turned his face towards her, his sightless eyes wide with a hope she couldn't see but could surely feel. "Please, Ma, I just need a chance to try." His mother was quiet for a long time. She was thinking about all the times he had been left out, all the times he had been treated like he was broken. She saw the fierce determination on his face, a look she didn't see often enough. This wasn't just about a piano. This was about proving something, not to the other boys, but to himself. "Okay," she said finally, her voice soft. "Okay, you can try. But you must promise me one thing." "What?" "You must promise me that you will not let their laughter break your heart. If you try and it is too hard, or if they are unkind, you walk away with your head held high. Your value is not in a piano or a talent show. It is in here." She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. Leo nodded, a serious look on his face. "I promise." The next day at school, the air felt different. Whispers seemed to follow him in the hallway. He heard his name more than usual, always in hushed tones. He knew people were talking about him. He knew they were talking about the boy who couldn't see, who thought he could play the piano. During recess, he stayed inside. He wanted to go to the auditorium. He needed to practice. But when he tapped his way to the big double doors, he found them locked. His heart sank. He stood there for a moment, his hand resting on the cool wood, feeling defeated. "Looking for something, son?" The voice was deep and raspy, and it came from down the hall. Leo recognized it. It was the school janitor. He was an older man who moved slowly. Leo didn't know his name, but he always smelled faintly of soap and sawdust, and his footsteps had a slow, shuffling sound. "The door is locked," Leo said, his voice small. "Aye, it usually is after hours," the janitor said. The sound of his shuffling steps came closer. "You're the boy, aren't you? The one who's got the whole school talking?" Leo felt his face grow hot. He nodded, unable to speak. The janitor was quiet for a moment. Leo could hear the jingle of a large keyring. "Wants to play the old piano, do you?" "Yes, sir," Leo whispered. "You know it's older than I am," the janitor said, and Leo thought he could hear a small smile in his voice. "And it hasn't been properly tuned in a decade. Sounds a bit like a cat with its tail stuck in a door." Despite his nervousness, Leo almost smiled. The janitor sighed. "Well, a deal's a deal, I suppose. Even a foolish one." There was a loud metallic clank as a key turned in the lock, and then the creak of the heavy door swinging open. "You can come in for 30 minutes. No more, and you don't make a mess, and you don't tell a soul I let you in, understand?" "Yes, yes, sir." "Thank you," Leo said, his heart leaping with gratitude. "Don't thank me yet," the janitor grumbled. "That old thing might change your mind for you." Leo walked carefully into the vast, empty auditorium. His footsteps echoed. The air was cool and still. He found the steps to the stage and climbed them, his cane tapping. He found the piano bench and sat down. He lifted the cover over the keys. The dust made him sneeze. He laid his hands gently on the keys. They felt cool and smooth under his fingertips. He took a deep breath and pressed down on a key. The sound that came out was not the beautiful, clear note he remembered. It was dull and slightly off, just as the janitor had said. It sounded tired. He tried another key and then another. Some notes sounded okay, but others were clearly wrong. A wave of disappointment washed over him. How could he make music with an instrument that was itself broken? He sat there for a long time, just feeling the keys, listening to their imperfect sounds. He played a simple scale, the one he had heard other children play in music class. It sounded jumbled and sour. His shoulders slumped. This was impossible. The janitor was right. The boys were right. His mother was right to be worried. He was just a blind boy with a foolish dream. He was about to give up when he decided to try one more thing. He wasn't trying to play a song anymore. He was just trying to listen. He pressed a key in the middle of the piano and held it down, letting the sound vibrate through the wood and into his fingers. He closed his eyes, a habit even though it was always dark, and just focused on the feeling. He moved to a different key and did the same. Then he pressed two keys together. He listened not just to the sound but to the way the vibrations felt together. He started to move his hands, not randomly but searching. He was looking for patterns, for combinations of notes that didn't fight each other. But that felt right together. He didn't know it. But he was teaching himself to listen to the soul of the piano, not just its voice. He found a group of 3 notes that, when played together, created a sad but beautiful sound. He played them again and again, letting the feeling sink into him. Then with his other hand, he found a single low note that rumbled like distant thunder underneath the sad chord. It wasn't a song. It was just a feeling, a mood made out of sound. He was so lost in this discovery that he didn't hear the 30 minutes pass. He didn't hear the janitor shuffle back in. The sudden sound of the man clearing his throat made Leo jump, his hands flying off the keys. "Time's up, lad," the janitor said. His voice was still gruff, but it sounded different, softer. Leo quickly stood up. "Thank you," he said again, feeling a little embarrassed. As he walked towards the door, the janitor spoke again. At the end there, that wasn't half bad." Leo stopped, surprised. "Most kids, they just bang on it," the janitor continued. You were listening to it." Leo didn't know what to say. He just nodded. "You can come back tomorrow," the janitor said quietly. "Same time. But remember our secret." A small flame of hope, which had almost gone out, flickered back to life inside Leo's chest. It wasn't much. The piano was still out of tune. The performance was still weeks away. The other boys were still probably laughing. But for the first time he had found a friend in the silence of the auditorium. And he had found that even a broken piano could make a kind of music, if you knew how to listen. A secret routine began for Leo. Every day, after the final school bell rang and the noisy rush of students faded away, he would wait. He would sit on a bench near the main entrance, pretending to wait for his mother, until the halls grew quiet. Then he would tap his way to the auditorium. The old janitor was always there. He never said much. Sometimes he would just grunt a greeting. Other times he would simply unlock the door with a loud clank and shuffle away. But he was always there, a silent partner in Leo's secret mission. Leo's world shrank to the size of the stage and the old, dusty piano. He didn't think about the talent show or the other kids. He didn't think about Rohan's promise. All he thought about were the keys under his fingers and the sounds they made. The piano was a difficult friend. It was stubborn and unpredictable. One key would stick and make no sound at all. Another would produce a loud, ugly twang that was completely different from the note right next to it. Leo had to learn its every quirk. He had to create a new map in his mind, not of a perfect piano, but of the specific, broken one. He started by trying to play simple tunes he knew. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and Happy Birthday. But on this piano, they sounded wrong and messy. The out-of-tune notes made the familiar melodies strange and sour. It was frustrating. He would play a sequence of notes, and it would sound nothing like the song in his head. He would clench his fists in his lap, feeling the heat of frustration in his face. One afternoon, after a particularly bad attempt, he slammed his hands down on the keys in anger, creating a horrible, crashing noise that echoed through the empty auditorium. He immediately felt ashamed. He sat perfectly still, waiting. He expected the janitor to come and tell him he was banned for making such a racket. But instead, from the darkness of the hall, the old man's voice came, calm and steady. "Having a fight with it, are you?" Leo nodded, his head hanging low. "You can't fight it, son," the janitor said. "It's an old thing. It's set in its ways. You have to dance with it. You have to listen to what it wants to give you, not what you want to take from it. The words settled in Leo's mind. Dance with it. Listen to what it wants to give you. He didn't understand it completely, but he let the idea sit with him. The next day, he didn't try to play a song. He went back to what he had done on the first day. He just explored. He found a key that had a sweet bell-like tone even though it was out of tune. He built a little pattern around it, using only the keys that sounded good to his ears. It wasn't a famous song. It was his song, a little melody that belonged only to him and that old piano. This became his method. He stopped trying to copy the music of the world. He started creating his own. His left hand found slow, deep patterns that rumbled like a heartbeat. His right hand danced over them with lighter, more playful notes. He wasn't reading music. He was feeling it. His body would sway gently as he played. His head tilted, a look of deep concentration on his face. He was in his own universe. Meanwhile, in the world outside the auditorium, things were changing. The initial joke about Leo and the piano had started to fade. But it was replaced by something else, curiosity. Whispers in the hallway were no longer just mocking. They were questions. Did you hear he's practicing every day? Is he any good? I saw the janitor letting him into the auditorium. What is he even doing in there? Rohan, the boy who had made the promise, started to feel a strange unease. The joke didn't feel funny anymore. His friends had stopped bringing it up. When someone mentioned the talent show, there was an awkward silence. He had expected Leo to give up after a day or two. He never expected the blind boy to have so much stubbornness. One afternoon, driven by a mix of guilt and curiosity, Rohan lingered near the auditorium after school. He saw Leo walk up and he saw the janitor unlock the door for him. He waited a few minutes, then crept quietly to the heavy auditorium doors and cracked one open. Just a sliver. He didn't go in. He just stood there, hidden in the doorway, and listened. He didn't hear the clumsy banging of a beginner. He didn't hear a simple children's song. He heard music. It was strange music, unlike anything he had heard on the radio or in movies. It was a little sad and a little hopeful. It flowed like water, with no clear beginning or end.
He could hear the deep rumbling chords from the bass keys and the delicate tinkling notes from the high ones weaving together.
And he could hear the occasional wrong note, the clunk or the twang from the old piano, but Leo didn't seem to mind. He would just flow around it, as if it were a rock in a stream, and continue his melody. Rohan stood there, frozen for a long time. He watched Leo's back. He saw the way the boy's shoulders moved with the music, how his head was tilted, completely lost in the world he was creating. He wasn't the awkward, quiet boy from the schoolyard. He was someone else entirely. He was an artist. A feeling of deep shame washed over Rohan, so strong it made his face feel hot. This wasn't a joke. This was real. Leo was pouring his heart into this old broken instrument, and Rohan's stupid promise felt cheap and ugly in comparison. He had made the promise to make his friends laugh, but Leo had accepted it as a lifeline to a dream. He closed the door as quietly as he could and walked away, the beautiful, strange music still echoing in his ears. He didn't feel like laughing anymore. Back inside, Leo was unaware of his secret listener. He was reaching a breakthrough. He had been listening to an old radio at home with his mother, and a piece of music had come on. It was a classical piece by a composer named Beethoven. The announcer had said something that stuck with Leo. A remarkable fact about this symphony is that Beethoven composed it when he was almost completely deaf. The words had hit Leo like a lightning bolt. Deaf. A composer who couldn't hear, writing some of the most famous music in the world. It meant that the music wasn't just in the ears. It was somewhere deeper. It was in the mind, in the heart, in the fingers. He asked his mother to play the piece again. It was complex and powerful, full of strong emotions. He knew he could never play it properly, especially not on his old piano. But he became obsessed with one small part of it, a gentle, flowing section. He tried to remember the feeling of it, the way the notes rose and fell. He went to the piano and tried to find those feelings on the keys. He wasn't copying the notes, he couldn't. He was trying to capture the soul of the music. He played a series of chords that felt like the same kind of sadness. He created a flowing pattern with his right hand that moved like the melody in his memory. It was hard. His fingers would get tangled. He would lose his place and have to start over. The piano would fight him with its bad notes. Sometimes he would just rest his head on the cool wood of the piano, feeling tired and discouraged. But he always went back. He would take a deep breath and place his fingers on the keys again. The janitor, watching from the back, never interrupted. He just let the boy work. Weeks slipped by. The posters for the talent show went up on the school walls. The excitement started to build again. But for Leo, the talent show was no longer a scary event. It had become a destination. It was the day he would get to share the music he had found in the darkness. The promise of a piano was still there, glowing in his mind, but it wasn't the only reason anymore. He was playing for the joy of it now. He was playing because he had discovered a part of himself he never knew existed. He had found a language that didn't need eyes to see. He was ready to speak it to the world. The air in the town changed as the day of the talent show drew near. You could feel it. Colorful posters were taped to every shop window and lamppost. At school, the teachers were a little more distracted, and the students were a lot more excited. Conversations in the cafeteria were all about costumes, song choices, and who was going to win. For Leo, the world became quieter, even as the noise around him grew. He moved through the hallways like a deep-sea diver, surrounded by a protective silence. The whispers and glances still happened, but they didn't seem to reach him anymore. He was living inside the music in his head, practicing the piece over and over, his fingers tapping silent patterns on his desk during lessons. His mother noticed the change in him. The nervous boy who had first told her about the show was gone. In his place was someone calmer, more focused. At home, he would sit at the kitchen table, not saying a word, just moving his fingers in the air, his face a mask of concentration. "Are you ready, Beta?" she asked him the night before the show, her voice gentle. Leo thought for a moment. "The piano is ready," he said, which was a strange answer. "I know what it wants to play now." His mother didn't fully understand, but she hugged him tightly. She was still worried, but her worry was now mixed with a fierce, glowing pride. The day of the talent show arrived. The school was buzzing from the moment the morning bell rang. After classes ended, everyone rushed home to get ready for the big evening event. Leo's mother helped him put on his best clothes, a crisp white shirt and dark trousers. She fussed over his hair, her hands trembling slightly. "You remember your promise, right?" she said, her voice thick with emotion. "No matter what happens out there, you are my brave, wonderful boy. I remember." "Ma," Leo said, giving her a small, confident smile. Meanwhile, across town, Rohan was getting ready too, but his heart felt like a heavy stone in his chest. All day he had been quiet. His friends, buzzing with their own excitement, had tried to joke with him about the blind kid's piano lesson, but the jokes fell flat. Rohan couldn't laugh. He could only hear the ghost of that beautiful, strange music from the auditorium echoing in his mind. He looked at the piggy bank on his dresser. It was where he saved money for video games and snacks. He knew it wasn't nearly enough. Not even close. The weight of his stupid, careless promise was crushing him. He had set it to look cool, to be the funny guy. Now he felt like the villain in a story. The school auditorium that evening was packed. Every seat was filled. Parents, teachers, and students chatted loudly, the sound bouncing off the high ceiling. Backstage was a chaos of nervous energy. Children in sparkly costumes practiced dance steps. A boy tuned his guitar. Everyone was jittery and excited. Leo stood off to the side with his mother, his hand resting lightly on her arm. He could feel the vibration of many footsteps through the floor. He could hear the high, nervous laughter of the other performers. The air smelled of perfume and hairspray. His mother squeezed his hand. "Are you scared?" she whispered. "A little," Leo admitted. "But mostly I just want to play for the piano. It deserves to be heard one last time." The show began. The heavy velvet curtains swung open. The principal, who was the host for the evening, welcomed everyone with a cheerful speech. Then the acts started coming one after another. There was a girl who sang a popular song, her voice sweet and clear. The crowd clapped warmly. A group of friends performed a hip-hop dance routine, their moves sharp and in sync, earning loud cheers. A boy did magic tricks, pulling a scarf from his sleeve, making the audience gasp and laugh. Backstage, Leo listened to each performance. He heard the applause, a wave of sound that washed over the stage after each act. He didn't feel jealous or more nervous. He just waited. This was a different world, a world of sight and spectacle. His world was about to begin when the lights went down and the sounds took over. His mother guided him to a chair near the side of the stage where he would wait for his turn. As he sat, he heard a familiar shuffling step approach. A smell of soap and sawdust filled the air. The old janitor stood beside him for a moment. He didn't say anything at first. Then he placed a rough, warm hand on Leo's shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Remember?" the old man whispered, his voice low and raspy. "You and the piano. Just you and the piano. Nothing else exists." Then he shuffled away. Leo sat up a little straighter. The janitor was right. From the other side of the backstage area, Rohan watched Leo. He saw the blind boy sitting so still, so calm amidst the chaos. He saw the janitor talk to him. He saw the look of serene focus on Leo's face. A knot tightened in Rohan's stomach. He wanted to run away. He couldn't bear to watch what he thought would be a public humiliation. But he also couldn't leave. He had to see it through. Finally, after what felt like both an eternity and a single breath, it was time. The principal walked to the center of the stage, a small piece of paper in his hand. "And now for our next performer," the principal said, his voice booming through the microphone. "He's a little different from our other acts tonight. He will be playing a piece on the piano for us. Please give a warm welcome to Leo." The applause was polite, but it was mixed with a wave of murmurs and whispers that swept across the audience. Everyone had heard the story. Everyone knew about the blind boy and the dare. The air in the room grew thick with a tense curiosity. Leo's mother gave his hand one last squeeze and guided him to the edge of the stage. "The piano is straight ahead, Beta," she whispered. "Just walk. You know the way?" And he did. He tapped his cane once, then folded it. He didn't need it here. He knew this space. He walked slowly, confidently across the wide stage towards the dark shape of the piano. The murmuring in the audience quieted to an eerie silence. All that could be heard was the soft sound of his footsteps on the wooden stage. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on him. They saw a small, sightless boy, looking very alone under the bright stage lights. They saw him find the piano bench and sit down. They saw him gently lift the cover from the keys. For a moment, he simply sat there, his hands resting in his lap. The silence was heavy, almost painful. In the audience, his mother held her breath. Backstage, Rohan closed his eyes, unable to look. Leo was not thinking about them. He was thinking about the janitor's words. "You and the piano," he raised his hands. He placed his fingers gently on the familiar, worn-down keys. He took a deep, slow breath and let it out. Then he began to play. The first few notes were soft and hesitant, like drops of rain before a storm. They were the little melody he had created, his own song. Then his left hand came down, pressing a deep, resonant chord that vibrated through the floorboards. The audience sat up a little straighter. This was not what they had expected. He continued, weaving his own melody with the feeling of the Beethoven piece he loved. His hands moved with a sure and certain grace, dancing across the keys. The music was sad, but it was also strong. It was lonely, but it was also full of hope. It told a story without words. A story of darkness, of struggle, of finding a light from within. He played through the piano's imperfections. When a note stuck, he flowed around it. When a string twanged, he incorporated the sound into his rhythm. He wasn't fighting the piano anymore. He was, as the janitor had said, dancing with it. His body swayed gently. A look of deep, peaceful concentration settled on his face. He was lost in the world of sound, completely unaware of the outside world. In the audience, the silence had transformed. It was no longer a silence of waiting or pity. It was a silence of awe. People stopped seeing a blind boy. They started hearing a musician. They were pulled into the river of his music, feeling its currents of emotion. A few people had tears silently rolling down their cheeks. Leo's mother cried, her hands pressed over her mouth, her heart swelling with a love so immense it hurt. Backstage, Rohan opened his eyes. The sound washed over him, wiping away all his guilt and shame and replacing it with something else. Pure, unadulterated wonder. He watched the boy on the stage, bathed in light, creating something beautiful out of nothing. He wasn't the butt of a joke. He was a magician. He was a hero. Leo played the final notes. A soft, high note hung in the air for a moment like a single star in a dark sky, and then faded into silence. For a second, there was nothing. No sound at all. Then, the auditorium erupted. The silence lasted only a heartbeat, but in that moment, the entire world inside the auditorium seemed to hold its breath. Then the spell broke. It started with a single thunderous clap from the back of the room. It was the old janitor standing by the doors, his work-roughened hands coming together with a sound like a gunshot. And then, as if that one sound had unlocked a dam, the entire auditorium exploded. The applause was not just loud. It was a physical force. It was a roaring wave of sound that crashed over the stage. People were on their feet, their hands stinging from the force of their clapping. There were cheers and whistles that cut through the noise. The sound was so immense, so full of raw emotion that Leo, still sitting at the piano, flinched for a second, his hands flying back to his lap. He had been so deep inside the music he had almost forgotten where he was. The return to the real world was sudden and overwhelming. The vibration of hundreds of people stomping their feet on the wooden floor traveled up through the piano bench and into his bones. The sound was a wall pushing against him. He sat very still, his head tilted, trying to understand it. Backstage, his mother was sobbing, her body shaking with relief and pride. She didn't even try to wipe the tears away. She just let them flow. The other performers, the dancers and singers, were also clapping, their earlier nervousness replaced by awe. They were kids and they understood something simple and powerful. Leo had been the best. Rohan stood frozen in the wings of the stage, the applause washing over him. He watched the small, still figure at the piano, and his own eyes filled with tears. They were not tears of sadness or pity, but of a shame so clean and sharp it felt like a kind of healing. He had been so wrong. He had seen only a boy who was missing something. He had never imagined that the boy could possess something so beautiful that it would make the whole town weep. On stage, Leo slowly understood. The noise wasn't anger. It wasn't laughter. It was, for him, a slow smile spread across his face, a real, genuine smile that lit up his whole being. He didn't know what to do, so he simply stood up from the bench and turned to face the blur of darkness where he knew the audience was. He gave a small, shy bow. This simple gesture made the crowd roar even louder. The principal had to come back on stage and hold up his hands for a long time before the noise finally began to die down. He put a hand on Leo's shoulder, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke into the microphone. "Thank you, Leo. Thank you for reminding us what true beauty sounds like." He guided Leo off the stage where his mother was waiting. She rushed forward and wrapped him in a hug so tight he could barely breathe. "My boy," she whispered over and over into his hair. "My brilliant, brilliant boy." The rest of the talent show was a blur. Another act or two performed, but no one's heart was really in it anymore. The judges huddled together, but everyone already knew who had won. When the principal announced the winners, third place went to the dance group, second place to the girl who sang. When he announced, "And first place for a performance we will never forget goes to Leo," the applause erupted all over again. But for Leo, the real prize came later, after the stage lights had dimmed and most of the crowd had gone home, chattering excitedly about the blind piano prodigy. Leo and his mother were gathering his things when a voice, hesitant and quiet, spoke from nearby. "Leo?" It was Rohan. He was standing there, his parents behind him, looking solemn. Rohan's own eyes were red-rimmed. Leo turned his head towards the voice. "Yes, you're playing." Rohan stumbled over his words. "It was the most amazing thing I've ever heard." "Thank you," Leo said softly. Rohan took a deep breath. "I made a promise. I said if you performed, I'd get you a piano." He looked down at his shoes. I don't have enough money. I'm really sorry." It was a stupid thing to say. There was a long, awkward silence. Leo's mother looked at Rohan's parents, who gave her a sad, understanding nod. They knew their son had learned a hard lesson, but then Leo spoke. "It's okay," he said. His voice was clear and calm. "You don't have to." Rohan looked up, surprised. "But I promised. You gave me a reason to play," Leo said. He wasn't smiling, but his face was peaceful. That was the real present. But the story of the blind boy and the piano did not end there. A local newspaper reporter had been in the audience. The next day, a story appeared in the paper with a big photo of Leo at the piano and the headline, "A promise of a piano leads to a performance of a lifetime." People read it and were moved. They called the newspaper. They called the school. A local business owner, a woman who ran a music shop, read the article and felt a pull at her heart. She had an old but very well-made upright piano in her shop. It had been there for years. It was sturdy and, most importantly, it was perfectly in tune. She called Leo's mother. "I read the story," she said. "I have a piano. It needs a home where it will be loved. I think I've found it." 2 days later, a large truck pulled up in front of Leo's small house. Neighbors came out to watch as the delivery men carefully rolled a large covered shape down a ramp. When they took the covering off, there it was. A beautiful dark wood piano. Leo's mother led him to it. She placed his hands on the smooth, polished wood. He ran his fingers over it, feeling its size, its solidity. Then he lifted the cover and touched the keys. They were cool and smooth and perfect. He pressed one. A single, pure, beautiful note rang out clear as a bell, filling the small living room. He didn't play a grand song. He just played his little melody, the one he had created for the old broken piano at school. On this new piano, it sounded different. It sounded the way he had always heard it in his head, sad, hopeful, and completely his own. He knew then that his life had changed. Not because he had won a prize or because he had a new piano. It had changed because he had found his voice. He had discovered that inside his darkness there was a light that could shine brighter than anyone had imagined. He would go on to take proper lessons. His talent would grow, but he would never forget the old, dusty piano in the auditorium, or the kind janitor, or even Rohan, whose careless joke had started it all, because sometimes the most beautiful songs begin not with a perfect note, but with a challenge, a struggle, and the courage to simply begin.